Good morning, fellow woodworkers. I thought I'd do a short video about the mortising attachment on this combination machine. This is a Minimax FS35 Smart. It's a 2006 model, and it's a 4-head Tercer 2-speed transmission for the planer infeed rollers, 7 meters and 14 meters per minute. Safety, usual European safety stop switch. But 35 just refers to the 35mm that we have on the cutters, 35 centimeters that we have on the cutters. This is a roughly equivalent to 14 inches, just slightly less. And if you're like me, you really hadn't come across these mortising attachments very much in your woodworking career, and you know, they're sort of a hard sell these days with the horizontal mortises that Festool has produced with the domino. And of course there are plenty of other ways of creating a mortise in a piece of wood, but I found this really quite fascinating, and it came with the machine when I purchased it, so I thought, why not have a look at it? Let's go over some of the features of it. On the FS35, they put the mortiser on the working side of the machine, which of course gets it in the way when you want to run long pieces. But I find that when I'm putting short pieces across the bed, I can stand on this side of the mortiser and it doesn't really get in the way. However, when you do need to move it for long pieces, it's just a question of removing or slightly loosening this nut here and another one on the other side, lifting it off, and I made a bracket for it over on my router table, and it stores it there. But it is a bit of a beast. I think it weighs, you know, in excess of 100 pounds. It's got a lot of cast iron there. One of the things that makes it easier to work with when you have it mounted, when you're using the jointer, is that some of the larger, more intrusive parts of it do actually come off. Let's take a look at that. First off, the hand wheel is used for the planer bed, for raising and lowering that, and it's just a keyed cylinder that slides on here, and this is used to raise and lower the mortising bed. Pretty obvious. Over here, the clamp slides off, and multiple turns on this very heavy stainless steel cylinder. It's completely overbuilt, I have to say. Comes off, and that can be stowed elsewhere. And this is quite neat. This handle slides off and it just keeps this out of the way a little bit better. I've got a 5/8 bird's mouth bit mounted in the mortiser right now. Naturally, don't use this. Don't keep this mounted when you're using it as a jointer. It's just a rather heavy and high-speed turning cutting bit. It's best not in the way. So this frees up a little bit, but as you can see, it's rather more difficult to get around. But for you know, short pieces going across here, as long as you can reach about this far, I think you'd be fine using it that way. So let's put it together. I'm going to set up a couple of projects today. I have been building some cutting boards, which I think many of you will be familiar with. It's a common design available on the internet these days, and they do make nice gifts, which is what I've been doing for some of my family and friends recently. And this handle goes on here. I did actually have a couple of small issues with it when I set this up yesterday, and I just want to go over some of the modifications that I had to make. Two things really. The first was on this arm here, which moves the table in and out. When it's fully in, the arm under here was contacting this rib. You can see where the powder coating has come off, and that only really happens, pardon me, when you slide the table across, and that was where it was making contact. So I disconnected here and here, and here, pulled it off, ground down about 3/16 off the end of that arm, and then reassembled it, and now it moves nice and smoothly back and forth. It's really bad when you would get to this point here and then it would stick, and then you would jerk it, and that would of course reduce the smoothness of the cut. And then the second thing that I noticed, which is really bizarre, I noticed on these cutting boards after I'd finished routing them that I had some small divots in the wood, and it looked like somebody had gone through with a hammer and a nail punch and pounded nail punch into it. It was just small little dimples, and it turned out the culprit was this part here. When I turned it over, there's a small nipple underneath here, and I've covered it with this black rubber tape. In fact, 2 strips of it, so the princess won't feel the pee anymore. You just see a slight indication there in this cross light of where that nipple was, and of course every time I clamped it down, it was making a nasty little impression in very hard end grain maple and cherry, so that was no good. But now that I've done that, I've had very few issues with it. Let's go over some of the operation on this machine now. Mounting the bits is very easy. First thing is turn off the power down here. Rotate the cutter head until you align the chuck key in here, which is an Allen wrench attachment. Take your bit, insert it in the jaws, and tighten. And then give it a little extra torque. And that's done. Let's see what the range of cut is on this. I've set a ruler on here to give you guys an idea, and there we have lined up. Let's turn this around for the one. There we go. And the maximum, oh, there's a small limiter here which we'll discuss later. So sliding in here, and the maximum depth there is 1 5/8 inches for the mortise on this particular bit. I suppose I could wiggle that out and get another 1/8 of an inch out of it, I suppose, but that's a decent depth for a mortise. Mounting the mortising attachment is really very simple. It just slots over a couple of bolts here and one on the other side, and then there are some small micro adjust bolts down here and on the other side also that allow you to raise the entire apparatus, but also more importantly level the mortising bed or table with the cutter. So I found it to be extremely accurate and well set up. It didn't require, it only took me a few minutes to get it just right. Just basically with some measuring brass measuring blocks here placed underneath the cutter, moving it back and forth at full extension and making sure that the distance remained the same across the whole plane. You also have these handles here. Obviously this moves the bed and the piece, the work piece, in and out, and this goes from side to side. There's a stop on the trunnion over here that you can adjust to limit the amount that it goes in. I've got it currently set up for about a 5/8 inch recess, and I'm not sure if it's entirely clear here, but this is a very small fence across here. It's a lip that the piece will butt up against. It's a small 1/8 of an inch lip right there, and it's cut away down here, which roughly represents the span of the range that the table will move, and basically the limitation in one pass of the length of the mortise that you will be able to cut. The handle raises and lowers the entire bed, and the clamp, of course, locks your piece down. Now these two pieces here, these pins and these locks here, are what are limiters on side-to-side sweep. So the best way to set this up is to essentially ensure that you have it set up for center on this. The reason I wanted to do this is I've made these cutting boards before, and I've always wanted to put a sort of a finger pull in here, just a handle for one to hold. This one I've done, and this is still pretty basic, but haven't finished it yet. But it's the concept here. You can hold it, and being symmetrical allows you to work on both sides of the cutting board. So, having marked where I want the ends of the mortises to stop, I put pencil marks here and here. I'll slide it into the clamps. And I found that if I clamp this down now and then swing this off, it gets really, really tight. It puts an excessive amount of pressure on the board. Of course, it led to that initial problem I mentioned earlier. So what I found is a little bit better is to put it in place. I set it up roughly symmetrical with the cutout in the fence as before. Move the lever to about here, and then tighten the clamp behind, and then do the following all the way across, and that's a nice firm bit. This thing isn't going anywhere. I did discover, however, one small issue, and that's when I want to move this all the way forward, this extra handle here now hits my cutting boards. Won't be an issue with boards which don't extend off the end of the table like this. So in this particular use, I've actually had to remove this, and it's not a big deal. The next thing I'm going to do is set up the side-to-side limiters to the pencil marks. So just bring the piece in up to the edge of the cutter. You can just see my pencil mark there to the left of the cutter. Slide the table over till the cutter lines up with the pencil mark. Tap, 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 tap. That should do it just there. And then slide this in there, it engages underneath, tighten the knob, done, and then do the same on the other side. There we go, just there, bring it in. Done. Now just line it up, check it, and here we go. To the mark, to the mark. Now the thing about these bits is that they don't plunge, they're not like router bits. They really only cut from side to side, so we have to make multiple passes and only taking a thin depth every time on each pass. And the best way I've discovered of doing this is just to work the machine side to side while applying gentle pressure on the in and out lever. As I move from side to side, you'll find that the piece just generally works its way in. Keep the parts moving quickly to eliminate burning, and it gets done quite quickly. Take a look. All right, here we go. I'll try not to get my big head in the way of the shot. First thing to do is turn on the dust collector. This is somewhat limiting. I really don't think it collects very much dust, quite frankly, but it helps, I suppose. Turn on the machine. And here we go. one mortise. It's going to be roughly the same stops as last time, but not quite. So it doesn't take a second just to set it up again. Lock there. Tighten. Done. Let's do it again. Not bad. This is the mortise when you've finished cutting. It goes up to the boundaries on the pencil marks, and it's a fairly clean cut. It will take a little bit of patience and a small sanding block just to get in here and sand the slight roughness at the end of the bit there, but overall I'm pretty pleased with that. The next thing we're going to do is just round over this edge around here with an 1/8 inch radius router bit, and it'll give it a little bit of a nicer feel. I do eventually go around the entire board and just round over with an 1/8 of an inch radius on the end of the butcher block. And the bearing on this bit really determined the depth of the mortise that I chose, and it feels good too in the hand, which I think is always the most important aspect. It just goes in here, and then I just managed to go around it this way. There are 3 ports on this machine for connecting the dust collector, and they all come in a rather obscure metric size, which essentially is about a 5-inch diameter. We need to step it down to a 4-inch. So the previous gentleman that owned this machine mounted these. They come from Home Depot, I think, and they are just plumbing connectors for 5-inch to 4-inch, and they're soft rubber, and with the quick connect fitting on the end of a 4-inch hose, you get a really good tight seal. That's as good as it gets. It stays on, well, usually. But I've never had it come off during operations, and it's very quick to connect over from when it switches from planer to jointer mode as well. On this machine you have 2 separate collectors for that. Okay, let's remove the bit. First thing first, turn the power off. Light's gone out. And through this plastic cover, if you turn the bit, you line up an Allen wrench, Allen key in there. Insert, I think it's a 6mm, and just loosen here, comes out. That's what they look like. This one's 5/8. I've got a selection of other size cutters on here which are magnetized to the back of my table saw. So there you have it, an expensive accessory to even more expensive machine that cuts mortises of varying widths, diameters and depths in a very repeatable fashion. very nice, but I'm not sure if it's really worth the extra expense of purchasing one unless you do a lot of that. And the domino machine, certainly the large one, will do the same job and be a little bit more versatile with a few other added accessories to it for less money. So I'm glad I've got it. I enjoy using it. Know I will find other reasons to use it, and the one of the more interesting ones which I can think of right away is the installation of sauce hinges, which I use quite a lot of.